Nobody told you the truth about chimpanzees. Every documentary made them look playful. Every zoo made them look harmless. Every nature show made you smile when they smiled back. That was a lie. And what you're about to hear is the reality that most people never survive long enough to fully understand. Chimpanzees are not your cousins who happen to live in trees. They are not the funny animals that mimic human behavior on viral videos. They are sophisticated, strategic, and in certain moments, something that can only be described as terrifyingly deliberate. Science has known this for decades. The public simply was not told. Let's start with the face. When a chimpanzee smiles at you, it is not happy. That wide open expression with teeth fully visible is not joy. It is fear, or it is a threat display. In chimpanzee behavioral language, the expression that humans interpret as a smile is called a fear grimace. It signals submission, anxiety, or in certain contexts, the moment before aggression. Every time you saw a chimpanzee grinning at a camera and thought it was adorable, you were misreading one of the most important warning signals in primate communication. That misreading has cost people limbs, and in some cases, it has cost them their lives. In 2009, a chimpanzee named Travis attacked a woman named Charla Nash in Stamford, Connecticut. Travis was not a wild animal. He was a domesticated chimpanzee who had lived with humans for 14 years. He had appeared in television commercials. He had been raised like a member of the family. He wore clothes. He drank wine from a stemmed glass. He used a computer. And in a single afternoon, he tore off Charla Nash's hands, her nose, her lips, and both of her eyes. The attack lasted 12 minutes before police arrived and shot Travis dead. 12 minutes of a 14-year-old domesticated chimpanzee that everyone thought was safe. Now understand something. Travis weighed approximately 200 pounds. An adult male chimpanzee carries roughly 4 to 5 times the upper body strength of an adult human male. Their muscles are built differently. The fiber composition is denser. The ratio of fast twitch muscle fibers is dramatically higher. When a chimpanzee grabs something, it does not grip the way a human grips. It locks. The mechanical advantage of its hand structure means that once a chimpanzee has latched onto something, removing it requires force that most humans simply cannot generate. Travis was not an exception. He was a warning that nobody properly heard. There have been documented chimpanzee attacks across Africa, the United States, and Europe involving sanctuary animals, research animals, and wild populations. In virtually every case, the people involved made the same mistake. They believed familiarity meant safety. They believed that because the animal had never attacked before, it would never attack. What they did not understand is that chimpanzees operate on social hierarchies that shift constantly. And the moment a human being drops below a certain threshold in a chimpanzee's assessment of dominance, everything changes. This is not aggression born from fear. This is aggression born from calculation. Field researchers who spent decades studying wild chimpanzee troops in Gombe and Thai forest documented something that fundamentally changed how primatologists understand chimpanzee cognition. Chimpanzee groups engage in what can only be described as warfare. Organized, coordinated, pre-planned raids into neighboring troop territories, not for food, not out of immediate threat response, but for territorial expansion and elimination of rival males. Jane Goodall, who spent years believing chimpanzees were fundamentally gentle creatures, watched in documented horror as the Kasekela chimpanzee community in Gombe systematically hunted and killed every male member of the neighboring Kahama community over a period of 4 years. They did not do it in open confrontation. They waited, they tracked, they isolated individual members of the rival group from their allies. And then they attacked in coordinated groups of 5 to 8, targeting males who were alone and vulnerable. Goodall wrote that she had not imagined chimpanzees were capable of such premeditated violence. The Gombe Chimpanzee War, as it became known, ran from 1974 to 1978. By the end, the Kahama community had been entirely wiped out. The Kasekela community then absorbed the Kahama territory. This was not animal aggression. This was territorial conquest with strategic patience behind it. The patience is what should frighten you most. Researchers have documented chimpanzees waiting hours in silence near a location where a target individual is expected to pass. They have documented chimps using grass stems as tools to extract termites, yes, but they have also documented them fashioning sharpened sticks to hunt and stab bush babies sleeping inside tree hollows. Chimpanzees are the only non-human animals ever observed crafting weapons with the apparent intent to kill another creature. They make spears. Let that settle. The cognitive architecture required for this behavior is extraordinary. You need to identify a target. You need to assess vulnerability. You need to select appropriate material. You need to modify that material to increase its lethality. You need to travel to where the target is likely to be. And you need to execute. This is not instinct. This is something frighteningly close to planning. And planning requires imagination, the ability to simulate a future scenario that has not yet happened, the ability to picture an outcome and work backward to create the steps needed to achieve it. For decades, science believed this capacity was uniquely human. The chimpanzee dismantled that assumption completely. Now think about what that means when a chimpanzee decides you are a threat. It does not just react, it assesses, it watches, it identifies your patterns. Researchers who work in close proximity to chimpanzee groups have reported animals that study human routines, notice which individuals carry food versus which carry cameras, and adjust their approach behavior accordingly. They know the difference between a confident human and an uncertain one. They read posture, they read eye contact, they read hesitation, and they exploit it. There is a documented behavioral pattern in chimpanzee groups where younger, lower-ranking males will test a human's response before the alpha male engages. They provoke a small response. They assess how the human reacts. If the human flinches, backs down, or shows uncertainty, that information travels through the group. The alpha then acts on that assessment. This is not instinct. This is coordinated behavioral intelligence applied to threat evaluation. The face comes back here too. Because the human instinct, when confronted with a chimpanzee showing a fear grimace, is to smile back, to try to match what appears to be a friendly expression. In chimpanzee social language, this is catastrophically wrong. You are not returning a smile. You are showing submission, uncertainty, and potentially provocative mimicry. You are communicating in a language you do not speak, and you are saying entirely the wrong thing. People have been attacked within seconds of smiling at a chimpanzee they believed was being friendly. In Cameroon in 2012, a group of chimpanzees escaped from a sanctuary enclosure and attacked several people in a nearby village. One child was killed. Several adults lost fingers and suffered severe facial injuries. These were sanctuary animals, animals that had regular human contact, animals that had been fed, cared for, and observed daily by staff who believed they understood them. The sanctuary director said afterward that there had been no warning signs, no unusual aggression in the days before, no behavioral signals that an attack was coming. But here is what research tells us. Chimpanzees are extraordinarily good at suppressing behavioral signals when it serves their purpose. They can mask stress responses. They can appear calm when they are not. The same cognitive sophistication that allows them to plan a hunt allows them to control their external presentation long enough to close the distance between themselves and a target. They can pretend. This is perhaps the single most unsettling thing that comparative psychology has confirmed about chimpanzees. The capacity for behavioral deception that requires a theory of mind. The ability to understand that another individual has a different mental state from your own, and to manipulate that mental state through strategic behavior. This capacity was once thought to be uniquely human. Research across multiple primate cognition labs has now confirmed that chimpanzees possess it. They know what you think, and they know how to make you think something else. An experiment conducted at a primate research center demonstrated that chimpanzees would deliberately mislead a human handler about the location of hidden food when they assessed the handler as a competitor rather than an ally. They would walk in the wrong direction, glance away from the correct location, create false movement patterns, and then, when the handler had been sufficiently misdirected, they would go directly to the food. They lied, systematically and strategically, to get what they wanted. Now extrapolate that to an attack scenario, an animal that can suppress aggression signals, that can appear calm and familiar while assessing the optimal moment to act, that can coordinate with other members of its group through subtle vocalizations and posture shifts that a human observer would not recognize as communication, that understands your weaknesses better than you understand its capabilities. This is what you're dealing with. The tragedy is not just that people have been hurt by chimpanzees. The tragedy is that the circumstances that led to those attacks were almost always created by human misunderstanding, by the belief that familiarity equals safety, by the interpretation of a fear grimace as a smile, by the assumption that an animal raised around humans had somehow stopped being what it fundamentally is. A chimpanzee raised from infancy in a human home, dressed in human clothes, fed human food, taught to use human tools, is still operating on 4 million years of primate evolutionary programming. The clothes do not change the cognition. The diet does not change the social hierarchy instincts. The training does not erase the capacity for strategic violence that allowed chimpanzee lineages to survive and dominate across the forests of Central and West Africa for millions of years. What the clothes and the training do is create a dangerous illusion, an illusion that the animal has crossed some threshold, become something different, become safe. It is not. The last thing researchers at the Yerkes National Primate Research Center noted in a long-term behavioral study was that captive chimpanzees who had spent decades in human company showed no reduction in their capacity for coordinated aggression when social triggers were activated. The behaviors lay dormant, suppressed by routine and familiarity in the absence of triggering conditions, but the neurological architecture was intact. The instincts were present. The capability was always there, waiting, patient. Behind the grimace that everyone kept calling a smile, the question was never whether they could. The question was always what would happen when the right moment arrived. And for too many people who thought they knew better, That moment came without a single second of warning they were prepared to understand.